I thought it was just a simple mistake that it would stop there, but I was wrong. That day was the beginning of what would become the most complicated, most forbidden moments of my life. Even now, as I tell you this story, I can feel my hands trembling because this isn't just a confession. It's a confrontation with my own inner conflict, shame, and desire. Alfred, my mother's husband, mature, charismatic, and always exuding confidence, was the kind of man who didn't need to speak loudly to command attention. Most of the time, he was quiet around the house, yet his presence was enough to fill any room. He was my mom's second husband, and we'd never had a close relationship. He was polite but distant until that day when everything changed. My mom, Jennifer, was out with her friends as usual. The house was left to Alfred and me. It was a quiet evening, or at least I thought it would be. I had retreated to my room to change clothes, standing in front of my mirror, dressed only in my underwear. I was about to slip into a dress when I heard the faint sound of the door creaking open. "Emily, your door's open," Alfred said softly from the doorway. His voice was calm yet strong enough to jolt me. I turned my head and saw his eyes on me. Time seemed to freeze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't cover myself, but I didn't move either. He hesitated at the door, his hand resting on it as if debating whether to come in or step back. His gaze lingered just long enough for me to feel a wave of confusion and something else, something unexplainable. My heart pounded in my chest. It was just a few seconds, but in those seconds everything seemed to shift. "I'm sorry," he said finally, averting his eyes, but his voice didn't sound entirely apologetic. It carried a hint of hesitation, as though he wasn't sure whether he truly regretted it. He stepped back, but his presence still filled the room even after he closed the door. "It's fine," I murmured, my voice shaking slightly, but inside I knew it wasn't fine. Something had shifted in me, and I couldn't ignore it. He left, and I was left alone with my thoughts, yet his lingering gaze and the subtle tension in the air stayed with me. That moment was etched into my mind, and I couldn't shake it. I thought it was just a mistake, something awkward, something that would fade, but I was wrong. Just a few days later it happened again, and this time it went even further. Up until that point, everything could have been chalked up to an awkward mistake, a poorly timed interaction, and I thought the same. But it didn't take long for me to realize that it wasn't going to stop there. That day was just the beginning. And now I'll tell you everything that happened from that moment onward. The next day we had a wedding to attend. One of my mom's closest friends was getting married for the second time. My mom was her usual cheerful, excitable self, all dressed up and ready for the event. Jennifer had always been someone who loved to have fun. I was devoted to my friends, but not necessarily to the idea of loyalty in the deeper sense. I, on the other hand, wasn't thrilled about going, but Alfred's presence at that wedding changed everything. We arrived at the venue together. As the crowd bustled around us, I found myself glancing at Alfred more than I should have. Maybe he had always been this handsome, this charismatic, and I just hadn't noticed before. Under the soft glow of the wedding lights, he seemed to radiate confidence. His suit was perfectly tailored, every step he took exuding effortless charm. Yet I was trying to shake the thoughts in my head. "Don't be ridiculous, Emily," I told myself, but my eyes kept wandering back to him. A dance started playing. My mom and Alfred were in the middle of the dance floor, swaying to the rhythm. Jennifer had that usual carefree smile on her face, but then mid-dance she suddenly turned to me and grinned. "Alfred asked Emily to dance," she said. "I need to go over to my friends for a bit." Something inside me jolted awake. My heart started racing. Alfred hesitated for a moment, then smiled and extended his hand toward me. His eyes held an expression that was unbothered, confident. "Come on, Emily," he said, his tone light. "You'll need to teach me a few moves." Jennifer already embarrassed me on the dance floor. With his easygoing demeanor, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. I reached out hesitantly, my voice trembling as I replied, "Sure." As we walked toward the dance floor under the gaze of the crowd, my nerves prickled. The moment his hand found its place on my waist, I felt my breathing quicken. His cologne, the warmth of his touch, it was all so real. This story is about to take a turn. If you're intrigued, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for more. Your support means the world. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment. While we danced, Alfred's eyes never left mine. "Emily, I had no idea you were this talented," he said with a warm smile. There was a certain charm in his voice that struck a chord deep within me. Dancing with you is genuinely enjoyable. I avoided his gaze, trying to mask whatever was flickering inside me. I'm just doing my best, I said, but the tremble in my voice betrayed me. Alfred's smile grew softer. Don't sell yourself short, he said, and I could feel his hand press more firmly against my waist. This isn't just dancing. We're sharing something. Don't you feel it? That was the moment I realized that the connection between us wasn't just about the dance. My body moved in time with the music, but my heart and mind were spinning out of control. The crowd around us, my mom, the noise, everything else faded away. There was only Alfred and the hands holding me steady. The confusion and desire inside me were overpowering. During the dance, Alfred's voice came softly but deeply, breaking through my chaotic thoughts. I wanted to apologize for the other day, he said. I just meant to give you a heads up, but like that, it was probably a little disrespectful to your space. Warmth surged through me, and I could feel my cheeks flush. My eyes drifted downward, but I wanted to ease the tension. It's okay, I said quickly, my voice shaking slightly. Really, it's no big deal. Those things can happen. Alfred paused for a moment but didn't stop dancing, his eyes steady on mine. Still, he continued, his voice softening. If it made you uncomfortable, I want you to know that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to get your attention. My heartbeat quickened. I wasn't uncomfortable, I said, trying to reassure him. At the same time, I was fighting the strange thrill that was beginning to rise inside me. Really, it's fine. The air between us thickened for a moment as we continued to dance. I was acutely aware of his hand on my waist and the sincerity in his gaze, which stirred something deep within me. But the intensity didn't last long as the music slowly came to an end. We stopped dancing. Thank you, Alfred said with a gentle smile. You're truly a wonderful dance partner. I simply nodded, my heart still racing. Thank you too, I said softly. Then I quickly returned to my table and sat down. Alfred lingered for a moment, his eyes still on me, before eventually moving to another table. But in that moment, those lingering glances made it clear that whatever this was between us was not over. If anything, it had just begun. Set up. When Jennifer returned to the wedding hall, she approached us with a bright smile on her face. What a lovely dance, she said, congratulating us. You both looked amazing out there. Her compliment only made me feel more flustered, but I tried to play it off. It was fun, I said with a faint smile. Alfred simply nodded politely, a barely visible smile playing on his lips. Jennifer continued speaking, clapping her hands excitedly. Guess what? After the wedding, the girls and I are having a bachelorette party. Completely girls only. Alfred, you'll take Emily home, right?
Alfred smiled lightly.
Of course, that's no problem, he replied casually. At that moment, I realized how unfair Jennifer's behavior was toward Alfred. On a night when she should have been by his side, she was leaving him alone. A pang of discomfort settled in my chest, but I pushed it down. Jennifer didn't seem to care in the slightest. Having fun with her friends was clearly her priority. When the wedding ended, Alfred and I walked toward the car together. Jennifer had already left with her friends to go elsewhere. We got into the car, and Alfred quietly started the engine. The silence between us during the drive was almost tangible. I stared out the window, trying not to feel like I needed to fill the quiet with words. But Alfred eventually broke the silence. Jennifer, sometimes she has different priorities, he said, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. But even so, it surprises me how thoughtless she can be at times. Nights like these, you'd expect your partner to be by your side. I didn't hear his tone. I was calm and reflective, but I could sense the hint of disappointment beneath it. His words struck a chord deep within me. The thought of someone like Alfred, strong, charismatic, and composed, feeling lonely, tugged at my heart. I gathered myself and responded, though my voice wavered slightly. Yes, I suppose at times like these, a little more consideration is important. Alfred nodded slightly. You're right, he said, his gaze still steady on the road. But I guess every relationship is different. In that moment, I felt an unspoken connection building between us. It was as if I could understand and even feel his loneliness. At the same time, I struggled to suppress my own emotions. That brief conversation seemed to draw me closer to him, the bond between us growing quietly yet powerfully. When we arrived home, Alfred opened the door and gestured for me to step inside. "Good night," he said, but it was clear from the way he hesitated that he wasn't quite ready to leave just yet. As I walked toward my room, I noticed Alfred still standing near the doorway. A strange urge stopped me in my tracks and I turned to face him. "Alfred," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "would you like to come in? Maybe we could talk for a while." Even though I could see in Alfred's eyes that he really wanted to stay, he politely declined. After what had happened the other day, he seemed hesitant. I had invited him in to show that I'd moved past it, that it wasn't a big deal anymore, but instead I found myself retreating to my room, replaying Jennifer's behavior and Alfred's words over and over in my mind. I could feel his loneliness. It affected me more than I wanted to admit. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I tried to calm myself down, but the thoughts in my head wouldn't quiet. Why was I thinking about him so much? Why couldn't I stop replaying the day he accidentally walked into my room? The hours crept by, and the house grew quieter. Jennifer still hadn't returned, and I had no idea what Alfred was doing. As I wrestled with my thoughts, the sound of my door suddenly opening made me freeze. I looked up to see Alfred standing in the doorway. His eyes held a sense of determination, but his expression was conflicted. I quickly stood up. "Alfred," I said, unable to hide the surprise in my voice. "What are you doing here?" He closed the door behind him but didn't step any further into the room. Instead, he stood there as if debating with himself. "Emily," he began, his voice low but laden with emotion, "you're right. Jennifer, she isn't fair to me. But tonight, I don't care about what Jennifer is doing or not doing." He took a step closer, his gaze locking onto mine. "For a while now, I felt something for you," he admitted, his voice steady but laced with hesitation. "Especially after that day, I walked into your room by accident. I can't get it out of my head. It was as though the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't speak, couldn't even think." Alfred continued, seemingly determined to get everything off his chest, no matter the consequences. "Maybe I'll regret saying this. Maybe I'm making a huge mistake, but I can't keep this inside anymore. Emily, I think about you all the time." He paused, searching my face for a reaction. I knew he could see the shock in my eyes. He took another step closer, his tone softening. "You understand me, Emily. Maybe you don't realize it, but you see me. That's something Jennifer has never been able to do." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The weight of the moment was overwhelming. I wanted to respond, but no words came to mind. The silence between us was heavy, filled with all the unspoken emotions we were too afraid to acknowledge. Alfred finally broke eye contact, his gaze falling to the floor. He sighed deeply and swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said, his voice quiet and almost fragile. "I shouldn't have said any of this. I should go." He turned away and started walking toward the door. His steps were deliberate, but it was clear each one carried a burden. When he reached for the doorknob, I noticed the way his shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. It was then that something inside me shifted. All my fears and confusion melted away, replaced by a boldness I didn't know I had. I couldn't let him leave. "Alfred," I called out, my voice a whisper but strong enough to fill the room. He stopped. Slowly, he turned back toward me, his eyes meeting mine. They were filled with turmoil, a battle of regret and longing playing out in their depths. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, with trembling hands, I slid the straps of my dress off my shoulders, letting it fall to the floor. The dim light in the room accentuated the bare skin of my shoulders, and the way the cool air kissed my body. I could feel Alfred's gaze on me, intense and unwavering. I knew he was watching every move, and I couldn't bring myself to look away. "I haven't forgotten either, Alfred," I said, my voice trembling, though the determination inside me was strong enough to overshadow it. "That day, the moment you walked into my room, everything changed. Since then, I've been trying to suppress these feelings, but I can't because I like you too. Maybe I have for a long time." As the words tumbled out, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might break free from my chest. Alfred stayed quiet for a moment, his eyes searching mine as though he was trying to process what I just said. But in those eyes I could see the same pull, the same undeniable connection I'd been feeling. Tonight, I said, taking a deep, steadying breath. I don't want to fight these feelings anymore. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but this is how I feel, Alfred. He stepped closer, his hands gently brushing my face. His touch was both tender and deliberate, as if he was afraid to break the moment. When our eyes locked, it felt like all the space between us had been nothing more than an illusion. Slowly, he leaned down and his lips met mine. That first kiss unleashed every emotion and desire we'd both been holding back for so long. Alfred's touch, his kisses grew more intense with each passing second. The thought of pulling back, of stopping, didn't even cross my mind. I was completely lost in the moment. Slowly, I stepped backward until I felt the edge of the bed against my legs, and I let myself fall onto it. I watched as Alfred's hands moved to the buttons of his shirt, carefully undoing them one by one. Every movement was deliberate, as if he wanted to savor this moment, to make it last. When he finally shrugged off his shirt, his confident and commanding presence seemed to fill the entire room. He took another step toward me, his gaze never leaving mine. After setting his clothes neatly at the edge of the bed, he leaned down, closer and closer, until there was nothing left between us but the electricity in the air. The air between us was filled only with passion and desire. Time seemed to stand still. There was only that moment, only us. He leaned over me, and we had a union in which we surrendered to each other completely. It was very emotional. I felt something big and warm inside me. This was different from anything I had ever felt before. When I looked at Alfred, I could see his broad shoulders and his muscular body. I closed my eyes and raised my hands in the air, pressing them firmly against the pillow, trying to follow the movements of Alfred's body. At that moment, my body contracted strongly. Alfred looked at me and said, "You're very special. I've always known that. I understand it better now." He was out of breath. "So are you, Alfred," I said, and I felt warm inside. Everything felt like a dream. As soon as Alfred lay down beside me, I rested my head on his chest. While lying against his strong chest, I could hear the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Feeling the reality of this moment brought both peace and a profound turmoil inside me. My fingers gently traced patterns across his chest as I gathered the courage to break the silence. "You didn't come into my room by accident this time, Alfred," I said, my voice low but heavy with meaning. I lifted my head to meet his gaze, my words forcing him to confront the truth, yet also revealing the turmoil I felt inside. Alfred smiled faintly, but he couldn't hide the depth of thought etched on his face. "No, Emily," he said. "Nothing about this was accidental. But I had to tell you how I feel, no matter how difficult it might be." I lowered my gaze back to his chest, my fingers slowing their movements. Taking a deep breath, I spoke again. "You're such a special and incredibly attractive man, Alfred," I said softly. "But what happens after this? How do we continue?" "My mom people." Alfred tilted his head slightly, pulling me closer to him as he ran his fingers through my hair. His voice was calm but filled with emotion. "I don't know, Emily. The only thing I do know is that here in this moment, everything feels real. Being close to me, I can't deny it." His words only deepened the storm inside me. But at the same time, his honesty soothed me. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth of his presence, while the uncertainty of the future loomed over us. In that moment, all we could do was feel each other. If you've made it this far, I know my story has touched you deeply. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss any of it. Be sure to hit the follow button, turn on notifications, and don't forget to leave a comment about this story. I can't wait to hear your thoughts.